Welcome to Form Machines. In this video, we will learn about multi-level approvals. It's common to track submissions through an approval process. Approval in Form Machines consists of a form variable that tracks an approval status, submit buttons that change approval statuses upon submission, rules that show or hide certain sections depending on the approval status, an optional email address notification. Here I have a simple leave request form. Let's assume that it requires two levels of approval. First the manager's approval, and then the HR approval. And finally the submission is either approved or rejected. Firstly, I'll create the form variable that tracks the current approval status. I'll add all the possible statuses as hints to the form variable. This makes the rule configuration easier. The initial status is draft. Now I'll create some approval sections. Next, I'll create a section for the final status. When we preview this, we can see all sections are visible. Let's create rules to show or hide these approval sections based on the form status. For the manager approval section, let's hide this section by default and only show if the status is await manager approval, await HR approval, approved or rejected. Similarly, for the HR approval section, let's hide this section by default and only show if the status is await HR approval, approved or rejected. Lastly, let's hide the final section and only show if the status is approved or rejected. Let's preview. We can now see none of the approval sections are visible. On the initial submit button, let's set the form status to await manager approval. Just before the submit action, so when this button is clicked, this form is set to await manager approval and then submitted. Now when we make a submission and reopen it, we can see the manager approval section, because the form is now in the Weight Manager section approval status. We can use the same logic to create approve or reject buttons. Approval buttons advance the status to the next stage and resubmit the form. Reject buttons set the status to rejected and resubmits the form. On the final section, let's place some labels on them and show the final approved or rejected statuses. Let's run through a new submission. I'd like to make some changes. First, I want to hide the initial submission button after the first submission. Then I want to hide the approval or the rejected buttons once the form has passed through that stage. I'll hide the submission button once submitted. In other words, we only want to see this button if the status is draft. Next, I want to hide the approval buttons, unless the form is at that particular stage. We can hide the buttons individually, but it's easier to apply the visibility rule on the whole row. Let's do another submission. Now when I reopen the submission, I no longer see the initial submit button, and the approve buttons become invisible once the form passes that stage. I'm going to add a comment field to both approval sections. Let's add some email notifications. First, we need to get the current user's manager. Because this is a team-hosted form, let's use Azure User Selector Control, and the default value is the current user's manager. Now I'll create an email submit location to notify the manager. I'll add a submit location condition, so this email only sends on await manager approval. Now when I preview, I can see the manager field is automatically populated with the current user's manager, and the email will be sent to that user. After some time, I've received the email, and I can click on the link to reopen the submission and continue with the approval. Let's use the same logic for the HR approval. This time we will use a static email address, and don't forget the condition so the email only sends on await HR approval. Let's do another complete example. Also, you can use our approval form scaffolding builder. This builder will replace much of the above manual steps. The scaffold builder builds all the necessary components in the designer. Simply drag and drop your controls onto the appropriate sections to complete the form. Note the scaffold builder does not handle email notification submit locations. In this video, we learnt about multi-level approval. For more information, visit formachines.com.